And now the news is good with Matthew Martin.
I'm Matthew Martin, and the news is good. Tonight, it's National Atheist Day. You heard me right. Today is National Atheist Day. And while I'm sure the holiday will draw very little attention, thankfully, compared to something like Valentine's Day or Easter, I don't think we should ignore it. In fact, I think we should take a page out of the playbook of our enemies and co-opt it. Let's subvert National Atheist Day. How? Did you know that one of the first and earliest slanders made against the Church of Christ was they're atheists? It makes sense if you think about it. Christians rejected the Roman pantheon of gods and goddesses in favor of a single god unknown to the religion of Rome. Granted, the Jews were also monotheists who rejected the Roman gods, but in that case, the Jews were a separate ethnic group. It was easy to distinguish them, what with their laws and customs that governed what they ate and where they worked and so forth. Romans might not have liked the Jews very much, but at least they knew when they saw one, and they saw them as different from them. Christianity, on the other hand, Christians were a people who blended into their environments. They weren't a separate ethnic class. They weren't a distinct nationality. They didn't have unique clothes or hairstyles. They didn't speak a national language. They didn't abstain from foods, generally speaking. What set them apart was their conduct. Usually that was a good thing. During times of disease, Christians famously tended to the sick, even if it meant contracting the illness themselves, because they cared so much about helping others, even their enemies. This was observed even by the Roman Emperor Julian in the 4th century, who complained that Christians were gaining influence because they cared for the poor and the sick, even among those outside their religion. His words were expressing frustration, but really they exposed how charitable God's people were as opposed to traditional Romans. Previously under Emperor Decius, around AD 250, Christians were required to obtain a libellus, a certificate proving that they had sacrificed to the Roman gods, and those who refused were persecuted or imprisoned or even executed. And this was one of the clearest examples of Christians being forced publicly to renounce their faith, and those who refused were punished, and the official justification was they were atheistic, not believers. I recently stumbled upon a letter penned in either the late 2nd or early 3rd century that describes the way Christians were perceived by the world around them. I won't quote all of it, but just a few relevant portions. Christians are indistinguishable from other men, either by nationality or language or customs. They do not inhabit separate cities of their own, or speak a strange dialect, or follow some outlandish way of life. With regard to dress and food and manner of life in general, they follow the customs of whatever city they happen to be living in, whether it is Greek or foreign. They are attacked by the Jews as alien. They are persecuted by the Greeks, yet no one can explain the reason for this hatred. The world hates the Christians, not because they have done any wrong, but because they, Christians, are opposed to its, the world's, enjoyments. End quote. I love the way the description of God's people is that they're hated by the people of the world, not because we hate the people of the world, but because we hate the pleasures of the world, which the people of the world have adopted. As the apostle tells us, love not the pleasures of the world, 1 John 2:15, and yet the Lord himself so loved the people of the world, John 3:16. That crucial distinction is the backbone of our interactions in this life. Beyond that, I was most struck by the way Christians were said to be a people who blended into whatever area in which they were living, while simultaneously standing out. We don't have special clothing or language or overly public rituals that make us odd, and that puts us at odds with, say, the Jews. Instead, we go about our lives relatively similarly to the way everyone else does. We just don't engage in sinful vices that everyone else does, and that puts us at odds with the pagans. This letter is just a glimpse into the Christian world, just a couple of centuries after the kingdom was established. But it shows us a primitive look at what the church's reputation was, and the way the early church existed in the world around it. In short, they were not a segment of society separated by superficial irregularities. They were in their communities, they were friends, they were neighbors, they were co-workers. They weren't just everywhere in the world, they were anywhere in the world, because wherever they were in Christ. And so it is today. God's people have always stood out. We have always been perceived as other by the world. So be it. We will be their atheists, but to God, the one true and living God, we will be his children. It is Thursday, March 19th, and my prayer for you today is that you will let go of whatever it is you're holding on to that is just keeping you from reaching that next level of Christianity. Whatever it is that's keeping you from being that slightly better servant, that slightly more charitable Christian, that slightly more forgiving Christian, that slightly more patient Christian, whatever that is, and it's different for everybody, whatever that is that you're holding on to from childhood trauma or recent past experiences and hardships and bitter thoughts that always tend to bubble up whenever someone is mentioned or something is mentioned, just let go of that. It can be very difficult to do that because if you give it enough time, you can kind of form your identity around that trauma. That becomes who you are. It's a part of who you are. It's as much your culture as your Southern heritage or whatever it is. But it's okay to let go of it. It's okay to release that, give it to the Lord, and then just feel unburdened by it. And then just be fresh and new. And you'll find once you've let go of it, you have a lot of space left over in your mental memory banks to fill with righteous thoughts, with charitable thoughts, with patient thoughts, with forgiving thoughts. And you'll be a better Christian than you ever thought you could be. That's my prayer for you today. Make that your challenge. I hope you can do it. God bless.
Will you come to me on this today? My daughter's wedding.